Okay, in our last video, I actually got a little bit frustrated with the toms. I want these videos to go perfectly, and so my brain's racing, and I'm trying hard, and I think I overthought that. And I went back and listened to what I had, and the toms were a good start. And so what I've elected to do at this point is nothing. The toms are good enough for this little chunk, as is for now. And there are a whole lot of pieces that have to come together on this particular mix. So the last thing I'm really worried about at this particular point are the toms. So let's go ahead and move on to something else, and let's see how the drums are doing. I guess the big lesson there, and the reason that I've mentioned it, is that it's so important that if you get frustrated where your brain's working against you, do something else. Take a break. Part of this notion of keeping the brain fresh and optimistic, positive, being pumped up about the mix is to kind of move fast. And you'll watch the Dave Pensados and these guys that are masters at this thing, and they will solo a track and they'll work on just their drums for who knows, for what looks like an eternity. They really focus on that stuff, and then they move on. Well, sometimes the big picture is healthy, and this doesn't mean that we ever compromise on our individual elements. It just means that, at least for me, I need the perspective of other tracks in there. So let's go ahead and toss in a bass and see what happens. All right, so now we're listening. Our hi-hat guy definitely that's a broken one. That should be a very interesting fix. I don't think we need that track, really. Yeah, and this bass player guy, he's real solid. He's easy to deal with. And real smooth. All we used was a DI on this. I don't think I have any emulation at all. Now, this was before I bought my Axe-Fx. My Axe-Fx is my go-to thing for bass now. If you're going to do a bass DI anyway, just running it through that thing with the impulses is something else. Okay, what I'm going to do first, I just need a little more level. And so I'm going to grab the UAD 1176. It's got some character. I wouldn't go nuts with saying it's a tone monster or anything like that, because I don't really think it's a life changer. But I'm really just using it to get the volume up. And what's funny is when we do this whole context thing of bouncing around from track to track, now I've noticed a dryness in my drums. And there's a tutorial I've already kind of prepared. I've got some ambience I'm going to be adding to it. But now that I've got bass, and I'm kind of liking this already, it may be a hair full, for lack of a better word, a hair too much of, well, let's just sweep and find it. We don't have to resort to idiotic adjectives here on these hyper guides. So let's see. Yeah, 200 hertz. It seems like it may be a hair heavy at 200. And I got a feeling when we start jabbing guitars in there, somebody's going to have to go. But that's all part of the fun. So let's just see. And you'll notice with this bass, and this is something with metal bass players especially, or hard rock bass players, so many of them want to do this whole clean bass thing. And I mean hyper clean. And it's almost never what you hear in real songs, because you need so much grind and so much harmonic content or distortion or whatever you want to call it. You've got to have that in there to cut through. Now this particular track here is clean, but I think I used my distressor and abused it heavily, and you can kind of tell by looking. I squashed it pretty good. So it's a start, but we're going to need way more. So let's go ahead and see what kind of bass distortion track I've got here. And there's no real telling. Okay, looks like nothing. Looks like it's the same bass. Okay, and now let's go ahead and play with this. The bass distortion, I'm going to go ahead and get pretty damn nasty. I know I can get away with murder here, and I don't know about you guys, but when I can get away with murder, I murder. I guess I never really tried it actually, but anyway, let's solve this bass distortion. Now this is just a stock Cubase distortion. What I don't like about it is it's kind of mushy, kind of sagging. I don't know. There's words for this that don't make any sense. Let's see what else we got in here. I like to just tear stuff up, so we'll see. And putting a distorting low end always gets you some mud, which you can use for good and get because you can use like the harmonics above those distorting low frequencies can be very useful sometimes. In this particular case, I'm going to go ahead and try to cut it first. Cubase has the option to switch pretty easily, so we'll see what happens. All right, so this EQ is going first and then the distortion. The idea here being that I clean that up a little bit and more mid-rangey kind of bass tone. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Now, let's see here. Yeah, don't know if we're going to be in phase. So this is a huge deal with anything low end. And if you guys are duplicating bass tracks, keep smashing my stuff. If you're duplicating bass tracks, make sure that they still work together in phase. They're going to have big problems. So we'll solo both of these together. And that's not worlds away from a real amp. Now, what I would like to do in the very near future is set up a very small reverb. And I would blend this distortion one just to give it a hair of being in a room. And I don't want anything obvious. The band shouldn't even know I put any ambience at all on this bass because that can be a big no-no. But my general deal with reverb is you don't want to send 100 hertz from a bass guitar anyway to a reverb unless you're doing something really weird. There's no room for it here in this rock type metal song. But since this particular distorted track, as we saw right here, had a lot of its low end all filtered out. Of course, we're bringing some of that back in with the distortion. But either way, it's mostly a mid-range instrument now. And so now it kind of makes sense. But again, that's something to be very careful with. And all I want it to do is whenever if we were to mute that reverb, it would sound like the bass was just like an inch from our head. And I don't really think I want that. I want it back just a little bit to give it some realisticness. So let's hop into that.